Monday, the 26th of June 2023. Today's special guest co-host Forrest Smith joins me as we talk about some stuff. Over the weekend, the ANC has new leadership for the first time in 8 years. We'll talk about that new leadership. Elsewhere, CapeXit, Cape Independence, CapeXit kaput as Cape Independence fails after political lackey Peter Murray tables what friend of the show Nazir Paulson terms the Western Cape stupid racist white people's bill. Elsewhere, thoughts and prayers with a terrible tragedy as marine craft disaster kills innocent people at sea. I'm talking about the economic migrants who died after their vessel capsized. If you thought I was talking about that fucking submarine, please check your white privilege at the door. Mainly, we'll be talking about the Cape Independence fail that happened over the weekend, in addition to an environmental influencer and a political uninfluencer, which we'll come to at the end of the show. Nantle, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. Well rested after Saturday's liquor CCM party that you could not have. Unfortunately, didn't make it.
Yeah, I couldn't make it. There was something happening, the Western Cape Provincial Conference, and it was an interesting. It was interesting. It confounded a lot of expectations, especially the leadership that emerged from that.
I was excited because we got our first. You went on it as a journalist for CCM. So for me, it was a big moment actually for the brand. You know what I'm saying? So it was cool.
It was good. I mean, like when you look at established media, like the people who read Peter Du Toit's stuff behind the paywall. I mean, we're on a platform that reaches like 350,000 people on TikTok. If it hits right, if the algo hits right, that's what we reach. Like literally nobody reads stuff that's behind the paywall on News 24, whatever the case may be.
New media.
New media is where it's at. Now, I don't have a guest today. I've got a guest co-host because I think this is going to be more of a discussion between the three of us in the room. Forrest Smith, how are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm super excited to be here and have a really engaging discussion.
Now, you were an author. You writing a book.
Yeah.
What's the subject of the book?
Okay, so the subject of the book is it's about a formula to just make the world better, and specifically South Africa. So I dive quite deep into history and politics and economics, a little bit on philosophy, and then. And then I go into something which I've also got a bit of expertise in, so to speak, technology, and how we can leverage certain technologies to build a more equitable country and, for example, cut down on corruption and things like that. So,
I don't want to give away the whole thing of the book, but you've spoken to me about it, and we're going to talk about that in future. So, guys, the ANC has elected leadership for the first time in 8 years. Now, the ANC went from 33% down to 18% in the last elections. So this is important for not only the ANC, but in terms of what it means for the DA and the opposition parties.
Yeah. I left the building a couple of years ago when it comes to the ANC. I'm one of those people, unfortunately, that I have no hope for the ANC anymore. It's a pity though, but I'm as somebody that watches the news and not the news really, but see what's happening around him, because it does affect our lives. It's a very interesting thing, and I enjoy you breaking it down for me, because I'm not that into I don't know the itsy bitsy stories, man. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting for you when you break it down for me and say, oh, this is the reason, oh, that is the reason. Okay, you know what I'm saying? So it's interesting. I don't understand the I don't know all the players, but it's very interesting to me.
Yeah. So, Carl, what's your take on the ANC and the reason why it's fallen to the lows that it's experiencing now in the province?
I mean, the ANC lost control of the province. I think the first coalition government was formed in 2007.
There was a coalition government that brought the ANC to provincial power. Ibrahim Rasool.
No, I mean after I think the DA took over in
2016 so in 2006 the city of Cape Town. 2009 in the province.
So there's an interesting dynamic behind it, but I think we've spoken about it a lot off camera. If you look at the demographic split between the eastern half and the western half of South Africa, the majority population in the eastern half is black Africans. And then if you move to the western half, the majority population is coloured South Africans. And what's ended up is the DA have taken advantage of the fact that the apartheid government made black people the lowest class of citizens and white people the highest class, and coloured people or Indian people and I can't remember what the exact group demographics were. I think you would have white people on top, then you'd have like Asians, and then would be coloured people, and there would be black people. So the idea behind this was, instead of making everyone basically below white people, you create these tiers of who's a better race or whatever. And the DA has taken advantage of that and basically taken the failures of the ANC in terms of creating a rainbow nation and placing black people over preference. Or there's this idea, at least, that black people take precedence over coloured people post-94. And so the DA has taken advantage of this to form a rhetoric that we're the only party in this country that governs well, but the Western Cape is just as untransformed as the rest of the country, if not more so.
So the space that the ANC occupies now, it's the crisis in the ANC is a mirror image of the crisis in the DA.
Yeah.
Because in 2016, the DA in the city had a majority. They had a mandate of 66%. And now they are polling in sort of in the low 50s. So they have lost anywhere from 10 to 15% support. The ANC has also lost support. So where's all the question is, where's all the support going to?
So I suspect that a lot of the ANC supporters will, who are leaving the party, look, the ANC is still going to be the strongest party in the country. They may not win a majority of the vote, but they will win a plurality. Now, the DA's strategy for a long time has been secure 20% of the vote. So, for example, Helen Zille was actually caught on tape saying that we want 20% of the vote so that we can hold a solid block of the population. And then what generally happens in new democracies like ours is when you reach a point where the liberation movement that created democracy in the country, when that liberation movement starts to fall, then you typically end up with coalition politics. So like in India, I think it's the BJP, the Blue Coalition, that's sort of, and yeah, there are a bunch of coalitions there. So the DA is going to keep their 20% voting block, and then they're going to enter into negotiations with the EFF or the IFP or African Christian Democrats or Freedom Front Plus, and they're going to use that to leverage power and therefore control the government without actually winning a popular vote.
So they're banking on the 20%, because 20%, if the support is being eaten away from the major political parties, 20% is, as you said, a lot to effectively go to market with, to form coalitions and.
Well, I mean, look, the DA itself is also losing a lot of support, and the way that they've mobilized their party rhetoric is to retain all of the people that defected from the DA to the Freedom Front Plus when Mumusi was head of the DA. You know, basically people who are like, I refuse to vote for a black man, so I'm going to defect to VF Plus.
Yeah.
So the DA have been spending the last, 5 years trying to win back that demographic of their voters. So they've gone...
You mean like the Conservatives?
The Conservatives, the right-wingers. So what do we hear from the DA all the time? It's, I don't want race-based policies, which is code for...
I want pro-white people policies.
I want to maintain the status quo. And they stick on this coded racist rhetoric to bring back those guys that defected to the Freedom Front. And instead of actually targeting the broader population and saying, my interests are serving the people of South Africa, not the minority. And the DA is a minority party, and they've accepted that, and they have no interest in winning votes from the ANC. They'll rather let the ANC eat itself and fracture and divide.
Yeah. Nantal, why do you think the DA are losing support? Because you've often had, a number of guests on this show and on other shows. You've had like Triple C who are opposed to the DA. You've had, African Restoration Alliance, some guys. We've had a lot of people who are opposed to the DA. So what's the common thread between these people that we can find?
Okay, let me just start the conversation with the DA guys. I didn't bring them in. It was Uncle Tom. Uncle Sam. What's Uncle
Stan?
Uncle Stan.
Uncle Stan.
So yeah, but I think there's a definite there's a need for. Let me put it this way: what they're saying is true. You know what I'm saying? There is a thing bubbling between races, and I think it is caused by the DA. And I've just got news now that some people in the ANC is directly a cause of it. So it's the type of politics that we've been accustomed to, where people campaign using a certain slogan, whatever. But once they come in power, it's like they never use that even.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that's why people are just waking up to the idea that we just want honesty, man. And I think with Trump and with CCC, I think people are just, at least, it's not what I want to hear, but at least you're giving the truth that I see around me every day, man. And people gravitate to the honesty, man. And I think that's the reason why they're losing and why the DA is losing as well.
Yeah.
And even though the ANC has got bigger fish to fry when it comes to the war that's coming, that's happening in Russia and stuff like that, with Russia at least, people, it's like, dude, we don't care about that, man. We don't care about that. We worried about getting food for the kids, man. You know what I'm saying? For themselves, man. So I think that's why people, and that's the reason why, not just the votes that they're losing, but that's why a lot of young people, we had crowbars in, where he says he doesn't vote. Because it's a sentiment that a lot of young people have. And a lot of young people are leaving the political scene, really. They don't care about it, you know?
Yeah.
So until honesty comes back, you know what I'm saying? We're gonna see a decline, and a continuous decline. And like you know, I'm lucky that I have a lot of people come in here and I get the perspectives, whatever. The same with Pagat. I don't know, I forgot his name now, but where he says there needs to be some form of not religious, but you must have some form of heart, man, and not your in game shouldn't be the bribe you're gonna get or whatever the case may be. It should be that you want to serve people, man. And I think that is the reason why once you get that back into politics, people will start participating more, man.
Yeah. So then let's look at the results of the conference. From the top five, we've got the chair is JJ Shalisiso. He was the regional secretary of the ANC in the Western Cape. He narrowly beat out Cameron Dugmore, 311 votes to 282 votes. The deputy chair of the province in the ANC, Sharon Davids, that was quite a clearer win, 340 votes to 256 votes. She beat Lulama Mvimbi. For Secretary, Neville Dalport is the new provincial secretary. Also won by quite a big margin. Deputy Secretary Ayanda Barnes, 348 votes. In fact, in the competitive election, he won more votes than anybody for the top five. And then the treasurer, Derek Appel, is unopposed. Now, there was a very interesting phenomenon that happened in this elective conference. There was something called a Rural for Change, which was comprised of people outside of the metro of Cape Town who platformed on, who campaigned on the thing that, look, the rural areas, like rural municipalities like Karoo and Theewaterskloof, they actually co-govern with other political parties, whereas in the metro, the ANC are really not a factor to consider with co-governance because the DA just have it their own way in the metro. These five office bearers are from five different regions in the Western Cape, so there's a lot of regional spread. How this will shake up, I think it's too early to do an analysis of what must happen, because these guys must meet, they must appoint their communications person, they must take a view on take positions on what needs to happen with the political strategy. So I think it's very early to comment on what this means and project it into the future. But what it is a realignment of ANC politics in the Western Cape. There's no doubt about that. We'll be hearing a lot more about this in the future. But I just wanted to touch on that, and also in light of the fact that the DA are losing support, the ANC have lost a lot of support. Where are these guys going, and how is the ANC going to realign itself to be basically taken seriously again?
So I think that if you look at well, firstly, the fact that South Africa is in we've been in an economic downward economic spiral for a very long time. And we've also just come out of the COVID pandemic, and inflation is through the roof. Petrol prices are just ridiculously high, etc., etc., etc. Now there are a million economic indicators that show that we're in trouble, but the one that's always been the most important, and that's been a key indicator, is our inequality issues in the country. And the higher your inequality levels get, and the deeper people are entrenched in poverty, the further away from the center they'll move. So you either move it to the far left, and you become radical socialists,
Populist or far left fascist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, fascism is a far right ideology. So what's happening is everyone's moving to the far right now, which is why you see the rise of movements, parties like the Patriotic Alliance and stuff, and Action SA. So we redirect our angst at foreigners, for example, or we say we need God in our education system, or something. You move to these extremist ideologies, which are a betrayal of our constitution. And so that's where all that support is going. And the ANC, if they want to keep on top of the Western Cape, should move to the left rather than to the right, offer an actual alternative. That is what your role is as an opposition, to say, we are not joining the ranks of these patriotic alliance guys and courting that vote. We're courting a vote on the other side, and then see where the people vote. That's how democracy is meant to operate.
Just coming back to the DA, there was a story that happened over the weekend. My friend Nqaba Bhanga, he made an accusation that Helen Zille is racist. He was given 48 hours to delete or apologize, bend the knee and kiss the ring of Helen Zille. And he said, nah, I'm going to leave that post where it is. I think I sent the link. But, the problem with the DA, the further right they move, the more support they lose in colored and black communities. So effectively, they're slicing this thing smaller and smaller and smaller.
I also think that the thing about the DA is, at least ostensibly, they're the middle class party. And there is a huge growing voter group that didn't exist 30 years ago. And that is the black middle class. The DA, by saying, oh, we hate it, BE and these quote-unquote oppressive policies, are directly alienating the middle-class black people whose votes they actually need to be courting. So they're just losing votes on all ends. Even middle-class white people like, actually, I'm tired of seeing Helen Zille's damn tweets, and are leaving, and they're leaving in waves to Action SA, which is like the closest kind of party to them ideologically.
Yeah. So I'm going to the Nqaba Bhanga joins a long list of black leaders that have left the DA, have called Helen Zille racist, have suffered the consequences of calling out racism. So Nqaba Bhanga has accepted suspension, says Eastern Cape leader Whitfield. The Democratic Alliance's Eastern Cape leader Andrew Whitfield said that the party's former provincial leader Nqaba Bhanga had provisionally accepted a provincial executive decision to suspend him. This after Bhanga labelled DA Federal Council chairperson Helen Zille a racist in a Facebook post. I'm trying to pull up what he said exactly. But I'm proud of my friend Nqaba. Nqaba, good shot, man. It took you a while to get there. You had to go through all of these trials by fire. You were you were the mayor. You had to deal with Athol Trollop. You had to deal with all of these people. You ascended the heights of DA Mount Olympus, and you saw Helen Zille was a racist. Good job for calling her out, brother. I will happily have a drink with you again. So there's a resistance in the let's not confuse this. John Steenhuisen doesn't run the DA. Helen Zille runs the DA.
I mean, of course, John Steenhuisen doesn't. He just seems to have no political instincts at all. He's a whinger, right? That's all he does. He's going to go on a platform and tell us the ANC is corrupt and the ANC is incompetent and that water is wet. Basically, you see, this is what happens when you enter the political sphere with a matric certificate which you attained under an education system created by the National Party. Your reading as your perspectives have not shifted from the history lessons that the apartheid government taught you.
I don't mind the matric certificate part. That doesn't, you can have qualifications and education or different things, but he's unqualified and uneducated in many ways.
There are plenty of people who only have a matric certificate who have great political opinions, but, they're not podgy middle-class white men, right, who sound like my deputy principal reading the high school rugby results.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I didn't say podgy. You body shamed him.
Sorry.
Shame on you. Yeah. Okay, look, so in the context of the ANC, I think that the new provincial leadership of the ANC has got a lot of work to do, especially, I think, mending relationships, but that's for the internal strategy of the ANC. We hope to see what the week comes. I hope to have the provincial chair on the show soon. If he's listening, or if anyone's listening, it's welcome. I would like to hear what the vision is for the ANC in the Western Cape, especially in the context of having to co-govern with other political parties in municipalities. Right. I think it's important for us now to move on to CapeXit. And CapeXit, kaput. Last week we had Jack Miller from the Cape Independence Party and Phil Craig from the Cape Independence Advocacy Group. Now, Kyle, I didn't know about this, but Phil Craig threatened to sue you. Why?
Because this CapeXit idea is simply not feasible. And I called him out on it, and I said he's a grifter, because these guys, they collect a lot of donations.
Let's define grift. So grift is championing a cause so that you can make money off that, not necessarily achieve the cause. And you saying that that's what these guys do?
Well, I mean, a free, independent Western Cape is, I mean, simply it's not constitutional. You have to read the first couple lines of the Constitution to know that it's not. It's completely unconstitutional. When we negotiated the creation of this country 30 years ago, we spoke about South Africa as one nation, and I feel like they preach this very seemingly sound idea to Cape Town's population, who looks around and does see a fundamentally different place to Johannesburg or Durban or other major metropolitans. And they don't understand that this idea is completely unfeasible, and the Cape Independent guys are collecting donations every single month. You know, they got mailing lists and stuff like that. And I just think it's a graft.
Nantel, you were very vocal last week. Yep. What was your impressions?
So they seem like nice guys, and from if you look, I'm still gonna say it. If they on the SABC and stuff like that, it makes sense when nobody challenges them in. So it makes sense what they're saying, and they're saying it in a liquor way, and blah blah blah, and like you say, you can see the difference between the Western Cape but if you sit, my experience was I would sit here and do my little press buttons, but then when I really just listen to them, seriously, it's not well thought out, and do you actually, without you even knowing it, you showing that you are a racist actually. Yeah, we'll get to the other stuff.
We will get to that. Yeah,
but it was blatantly. I don't know, but I must say, Phil, besides his suing you, whatever, or threatened you, he seemed like a nice guy, but I just don't agree with what you're saying.
Yeah,
what he's saying, I just don't agree with it.
No, I had the same impression. Like, you know, like I mean, in the past I've sat down with Jack to try and fucking understand. Like, look here, what the fuck, and I would happily have a drink with Phil and say, like, you know,
Jack on the other end, I had the camera on him, and it seems like whatever I said is like, who cares, bro? Who cares? And that's white privilege right there, man. That's a arrogant. But okay, I could be wrong. You could just have one of those faces, but I don't know.
So okay, let's get into this, because we got a lot to get through about CapeXit. As that's copyright of Chester Missing. He calls it CapeXit. Another guy
who's also blocked me on Twitter, by the way.
Really?
Chester Missing.
Oh, you awesome! What did you say?
I don't remember.
Oh God. Well, I mean, Philip Dexter blocked you on Twitter. That's what you get when you drunk tweet.
Who's the common denominator?
Forrest Smith.
Yep. So I think
I think it's a you problem, bro.
Yeah. But what I will say about this Cape Independence Cape Independence movement is that it's fundamentally no different to what the architects of apartheid proposed. They were talking about separate development and the right to sovereignty and whatever, but then they split South Africa up and they sent all the indigenous people to their homelands, the quote-unquote Bantustans, right? Hold on to all the great resources like the gold in Joburg, the diamond mines in Italy, Cape Town's tourism industry, etc., all the railways, all belongs to us.
The electricity generation capacity.
You get none of the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And guess what? What else? You don't have a Senate. You don't get to vote. Because we're going to have a referendum in the Western Cape. But if you live up in Johannesburg, you're saying a massive, massive move for the Republic of South Africa. You have no say in it. This is fundamentally it's an extension, a more palatable version of what the apartheid government aimed to achieve, except they don't use words like European and black and whatever. They use coded language like taxpayer and non-taxpayers and us and them and the welfare state or whatever.
And also immigration. I think that came up in our debate when Phil said, "Oh, there's been Xhosa immigration." It's like, for fuck's sakes, they're part of the country. There's no immigration. You immigrate when you're from another country, so that just shows the mindset. Look, let's get to the clips. There's a lot to get through here, so let's start at the start.
In 1993, you had the IFP, the Inkatha Freedom Party. You had Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi pushing for a federalist system. In fact, the Zulus, there were definitely factions amongst the Zulus that wanted KZN to be an independent country. And so we believe from the beginning that federalism or a decentralized system or independent states would have been the best solution. However, the ANC promised us a dream of a rainbow nation. And because the IFP, as well as the Progressive Federal Party, which was sidelined in those negotiations, and in essence, you had the apartheid government and the new apartheid government in the form of the ANC meeting alone to decide the future of the country. All of these groups had no choice.
Pause it there. The IFP specifically excluded themselves from negotiations in '94. In fact, they said, we're not going to be part of these elections. And eventually, 3 days before the time, they said, actually, we're going to join. Their name had to, the name of the party had to be added to the ballot. But it's just a bullshit that that other parties were excluded from this fucking thing.
It's also worthy noting that Nelson Mandela's promise of a rainbow nation is what kept this country from going to civil war.
Yeah.
Especially in '93, in the wake of Chris Hani's death. And so what's he saying? We should have aimed for a federalized system back then already and descended into, I hate to say it, but the Balkan states.
Let's continue that because Jack talks about cultural oppression. We try to decide which culture. Just take it back 5 seconds and keep playing it back.
My father's organization had no choice. Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi had no choice. Helen Suzman had no choice. All of these groups had no choice. We were forced a political construct that was decided between the apartheid government and the new apartheid government in the form of the ANC. Okay,
so having no choice, we had democracy foisted on us. Yeah. It was, no, you had democracy, we didn't want this fucking democracy. It was foisted on us. That's just, again, That's just white supremacy.
I think fundamentally what this comes down to is a lack of understanding of what the system of apartheid actually was. Because if you're willing to, with a straight face, say that the ANC operates just like the apartheid government, I don't have words for you. Now, that's not saying that the ANC operates well. Trust me. I mean, I detest the ANC, and I think that they did break the promises they made this country. They did become a significantly less respectable organization, to put it mildly, after the year 1994, after they won power in this country. But look, I'm a white South African. I don't got to carry a pass when I'm walking around. My education is not substandard. In fact, my education was significantly better than vast swaths of this country. I can marry anyone I like. I can... Okay, well...
Freedom of movement, freedom of choice, freedom of speech, freedom.
I have all the freedoms that everyone else has. No, but preferential hiring policies is a completely different story. Sure, you can make an argument about the efficacy of BEE, and I'm open to having that discussion. But to pretend like we don't need BEE or something similar is absurd, and suggesting that white people are oppressed is insane.
Well, look, Jack says that this thing started in the CapeXit started in 2007, but in an interview with Bizdwas, Alec Hogg, he says a different story. So the thing is that like these guys were never had a good faith relationship with like what the vision for a multiracial, multicultural society. From the start of democracy, they tried to tie its shoelaces and kick it over the cliff. So let's play this clip where he tells Alec Dwers all about how this thing started.
Let's go back a lot deeper. My father was involved in 1993.
1993.
He founded a group called the Committee for the Cape Republic. And he chose the civic route, a pressure group. He got hundreds of thousands of petitions together back there in 93, 94 to push for, people were asking, what would this new South Africa look like?
Pause it there.
And he, in conjunction...
So in 1993, 1994, they already started this thing about like, oh, geez, we need to escape this democracy that was foisted on us.
We need our separate development.
We need our separate development. We're not happy with this.
We know what's going to happen.
What's going to happen?
They rise to power.
Then, oh God,
they're just going to take our tax money.
But we are taxpayers.
No, sorry. You can pay for goods at a store, and that 14% of VAT, or I don't know what VAT is now. Sorry, that's
15%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, that 15% that comes off, that's not tax money apparently.
Yeah. So defining a taxpayer is based when a CapeXit guy says taxpayer, they mean white guy.
They mean white people. Straight up there. Like I said, this is coded language. So we can't use the K word anymore because that's not considered socially acceptable. We can't say black, we can't say African and colored, because that's, then we're letting our mask slip off, right?
So we use the word?
So I say taxpayer. Or I say, so I talk about Cape Town's overrepresented contributions towards South Africa's national...
Yes.
The fiscus. In other words, my white society runs better than your black society, so I'm going to take all the stuff all this land that I stole from you, and I'm going to head for the hills, and you guys can do your own thing. Like, well... Cape Town's tourism industry, for example. There's I laugh at people who live in Joburg all the time because Cape Town is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. You can speak to anyone that comes as a tourist here. Anyone who's traveled around the world will tell you Cape Town is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. White people didn't create that. And in fact, they stole the land upon which they now claim state superiority or governance superiority over, these others who vote for the ANC.
But let's understand what the Cape Party are saying. They're saying, listen, Jack sat there, he sat in that chair and he said, look, we were very concerned in 2007, 13 years after democracy with the way things are going, and we decided that we're going to start this. Bullshit. They started this thing by his own words. He said, we started in 1993 before democratic elections. So they were an outcropping of white supremacy.
Can I just say that that Cape of Good Hope flag in the background of his video looks an awful lot like an RVBO flag.
Yes, it's just a little bit of take the blue out.
If that blue was black.
If the blue was black. Yeah, if the blue was black. It's a little bit...
Also kind of resembles the old South African flag.
And also, look
Makes you think.
Look at the it's an anchor, right? Who came here? White men with anchors, with their ships. It's not the fucking...
No. Is that Tupac?
Forget that. You know what that anchor...
Is that Tupac? Look here.
That is... Oh, that... Ah.
It looks like Tupac, no?
It does look like Tupac.
So he can't be racist.
He can't be racist.
No,
he
but,
likes to...
Okay, so that anchor right there, that looks like the VOC logo.
Exactly.
So, if you want to talk about people who have done some good things in South Africa and people who have done some bad things in South Africa, I think when it comes to the Dutch East India Company, maybe these guys will disagree with me. But
I think they would.
Right up there with Cecil John Rhodes and De Beers, I would say. They probably did this country a bigger disservice than the ANC ever could. If the ANC had to rule this country for the next 100 years and drive it straight into the ground, they will not match the VOC's land dispossession, import and export of slaves, all kinds of human rights transgressions that the ANC couldn't begin to imagine.
Yeah. Right. We've got a lot to get through. Let's go through the next clip, because this is going to be a point-by-point refutation of the bullshit that we heard on the show last week. So I think this has to do with the Western Cape being the most diverse province. Let's go with that. 5-6. Let's go with that. People. But okay, you understand my problem that I'm having with this. It's the exclusion of black people from this project.
Why do you say that?
Because the historical borders of the Cape Province was mainly, it was the Eastern Cape, the Northern Cape, and what's now the Western Cape.
Well, you must have a problem with the Rainbow Nation then, because the Western Cape is the true Rainbow Nation. We are the most ethnically diverse.
Pause it there. That'll be a good slogan for the Western Cape government, Nandel. The true Rainbow Nation. We should write to Alan Windy, the true Rainbow Nation.
I really don't know what the difference is, why you would say that, really.
Anyways.
Okay, so I've lived in Cape Town for the vast majority of my life. I'm originally from the Transvaal, right? I was born in the old school Transvaal, but I moved to Cape Town, I think, in 93, actually, when I was still young. And I've grown up in this place. And I went to one of those fancy old boys schools and stuff. This is not the most diverse province in the country.
Let's see what Jack defines as diversity. Just pull it back 3 seconds.
Yeah, the province are far less ethnically diverse. 80-90%.
Yeah. So the province is far less diverse. Is there more to that clip?
No.
Okay, so the province is far less diverse. I've seen this in DA posters where they've done they've taken photos of various representatives at various levels, and they've said, "Look at our diversity."
No, we actually do have great diversity, right? There is a huge diversity. If you drive along the M5, and you're driving towards the CBD, everything on the right-hand side of the M5 is very, very, very different to what's on the left-hand side of the M5. If you take Grassy Park and Ottery, and then you got Plumstead, those that Plumstead and Kenilworth kind of area, it's a very, very, very different from. And this is what the DA has gotten very good at. Regions like Constantia, New Zealand's, Bishop's Court, Sea Point, Ronnebosch, those Pinelands even to an extent, are very, very different looking to Hanover Park, Elsie's River, Blue Downs, Guguletu, Manenberg, Khayelitsha.
But they define diversity as more white people.
Yeah, pretty much, because ultimately what these guys are upset about is that black people in South Africa outnumber white people 10 to 1. And what they're petrified of is this kind of, there's a lot of fear-mongering over white oppression, because white people in this country are so repressed. I got to go to live under, between four walls and a roof tonight, and that's like the real oppression.
No, we'll get to oppression, like the real oppression and the grievance later on. So we decoding CapeXit. So diversity means more white people. Okay, let's go to the next class about the stratification of society along race lines: black, white, colored, Indian.
I think we're all a happy family here in the Cape. I think everyone fits in, and so you've got people. There's a broad spectrum of people that believe in Cape independence, and as Phil has said, it takes a number of different people to build a house, and everyone needs to play their part and play their role. So I'm not familiar with this group that you're referring to, but yeah, we're a broad family, and we support anyone that realizes that this system is failing under the ANC. And we need to try and change it. And I think many people see Cape independence as the solution. And many people in the coloured community, because you're absolutely right. The coloured community, under the Apartheid government, colours were second-class citizens. And many of our members in Mitchell's Plain and Delft and Lavender Hill, etc., the coloured community says we were second-class citizens under Apartheid, we're third-class citizens under the ANC. So,
right.
Who was the first-class citizen?
Who was first-class citizen under Apartheid? And who's first-class citizens now?
No, man.
Let's take a guess.
Let's not talk about that, because, like I said, this is what the Apartheid government wanted to do when they separated. So, when Apartheid started out, it was Europeans and non-Europeans, and that turned into whites and non-whites, and then you through a series of political reforms, I'm sure you guys have heard of the tricameral parliament, right, where the Apartheid government made all kinds of concessions, allowed coloured people to vote, and etc. So that made coloured people second-class citizens in the old South Africa.
When it comes to job reservation, things that impacted them, impacted a group of people, their material existence.
Yeah. So let's say white people were at the top, coloured people were in the middle, black people at the bottom. Now coloured people are angry because it's white people at the top, black people in the middle, coloured people at the bottom. But at the end of the day, it's white people at the top.
Still at the top.
And that's the end of the story. And that's why we have a problem. That's why this idea of separate development and secession and disregarding our constitution is so dangerous.
Yeah, this idea that, you see, what he doesn't mention is that coloured people, where white people are, and even with BEE, affirmative action, any sort of redress, white people are still at the top of this pyramid, because the black people who are now in positions of power, wealth, and influence have been co-opted by white capital. Look at the top CEOs of JSE listed companies. It's as lily white as the Tottenham home kit. It's the fucking white as a sleep blizzard in Alaska.
I think, is it 3% of the JSE top 100 companies are...
something like that. I don't want to commit to a figure, but
I don't know. But it's something like that.
I mean, so the political economy...
brought it up the other day.
Yeah, the political economy of South Africa is still hugely untransformed. I think partly as a result of co-option by capital, and also partly as a result of the ANC not really doing what it was supposed to do.
Well, look. So the thing is that the ANC are just doing what every government in South Africa has done literally since Europeans first landed on our shore, which is to extract as much value out of the economy as possible and give as little back as possible in terms of infrastructure and basic services.
Extraction is the key word, extractive.
South Africa was the reason that the British and the Dutch had presence here was to get as much of our natural resources and land as possible, and for cheap labor. And this is, the ANC has just continued this, except we do it now under the guise of a democracy, where South Africa's people will not be freed until they're economically freed. And that is the end of the story. And the economic situation in this country is favored towards white people. It's favored away from colored people. It's favored away from black people. Policies like BEE are supposed to correct this. And again, like I said, you can argue that BEE has been ineffective for a number of reasons. But to say that non-racialism is your stance is to say we're happy with the current status quo and we think that somehow it's just going to change without any concessions made to actually address the history of this country, which race plays a central role in. And that's undeniable. I just don't understand.
So who is first class? Well, the white people. And this, I can also mention the names of coloured suburbs like these guys. What is Kales River, Grassy Park, whatever he said. So it's really just kind of he uses coloured people as a shield to maintain white supremacy.
No, this is that's exactly what they do. It's like I was saying earlier. The majority of the western half of South Africa is coloured. And that's the reason the DA has a political stronghold in the Cape. It's because of the faux war that that have been manufactured for coloured people and black people to fight off each other, while the white people put up their hands and say, okay, I'm not getting involved, I'm just going to stand here on my perch and live with my unearned privileges.
Right, let's go on to the next one. We're not even halfway through this list. There was a lot of bullshit last week, so we're going to go through this piece by piece. Let's play this. But I don't really buy this concept of an independent Cape as being a caring social welfare state, particularly if you're going to then further divide it into what is termed cantons.
Well, that's not our decision. That's your decision. So when you say, you're talking as if somehow Jack and I are going to decide what the Western Cape looks like. You're going to I'm going to have one vote. You're going to have one vote. You're going to have one vote. Not my decision, not his decision. It's the people of the Western Cape.
Okay, so the people of the Western Cape under this thing. It says it's not your decision, it's not my decision. We don't decide. But the reason why they're defining this white ethno state along the Western Cape is because it will be a a conservative, reactionary, white pride country.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's like I said, it's fundamentally a move to. Okay, I read a quote once that says, "To people who are accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression." Mm-hmm. Okay, and they've manufactured this fear that white people are somehow being oppressed by the ANC. And a lot of white people are feeling the pinches in their pockets as our economy tumbles, and they're like, this is a flippin' great idea. They've never read the South African Constitution or studied it in any capacity. They don't understand that this is a rehash of the rhetoric that led to the creation of the system of apartheid. And they don't understand that economically this project just simply isn't viable. But white people are programmed to believe that our ability to govern is somehow inherently better than black people's.
So then that decision being ours about what the state would look like, it would, because of the makeup of the Western Cape, it wouldn't really be the course that this entity would take would be a white nationalist state simply because of the demographics and the sentiment of this thing.
I mean, look, I don't know how this thing. So the practicality of this project confuses me because, firstly, how are you going to define who a Western Cape citizen is? What if I have a home in the Western Cape, but I actually live in Joburg? Am I now a citizen of both countries, or what? What if I work in Joburg, but my family lives in the Western Cape, and I, commute back every week or something? How are you going to separate who are the Western Cape citizens and who are the South African citizens? If I live in the Western Cape and I choose I want to be a South African, not a Cape of Good Hope, or I don't know what they're going to call themselves. But what if I say, actually, my national identity is to be a South African? You voted for your referendum. Now I need to go and reclaim my nationality by leaving my home, leaving my job behind, leaving my family behind. Where's the democracy there? Where's my right to sovereignty there?
But again, we are dealing with a fabulous fantasy idea, and the reason why we're doing this is so that we can poke holes in this bullshit, so that more people understand what a fuck up this idea is. Okay, let's move on to the next clip, and I think this has to do with slavery. Why would I let you go? That makes no sense. Why would I cut off my own arm? So I am not going to then sanction a referendum for people who want to see my arm cut off with the question, should Roscoe cut his arm off or not?
Isn't that just the question that slave owners had?
Ooh.
Why would I let my slave go?
Why?
Why would I let my slave go?
I think calling people West Cape slave is...
No, it's an extreme example.
It's not an extreme example. It's a perfect example. Why? You tell me, why does the ANC have dictatorial decision about saying, no, we're not going to let the Western Cape go? You tell me. How is that different from a slave?
I think there's huge differences between indentured labor and drawing lines on a map. I think they're massive.
We are enslaved. The Division of Revenue Act enslaves us. We are financial slaves to the national government, forking out 250 billion rand of our blood, sweat and tears, and the ANC, you're saying, will not let us go. That is slavery.
Yeah. Let my people go, said Moses. Okay, so let's deal with the fucking stupidest idea of living in the Western Cape as a white person, where you are probably at worst living in fucking Fishhoek in a duplex as slavery.
Yeah, sometimes when I collect my check from work and I see that zero, it gets to me.
Another work of another month of indentured labor.
I'm just so tired of being a
Of being
white
a slave.
slave in South Africa. It's, okay, look, all jokes aside now, okay, because slavery is actually a fucking serious issue. Excuse, I'm not allowed to swear.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I've been swearing the whole time, so to encourage you, because
So slavery is a really, really fucking sensitive issue to a lot of people, especially the Cape Coloureds that these guys claim to be such huge proponents for, because the coloured population was effectively born out of slaves. So the absolute ignorance it takes to speak about the history of the Western Cape, which was 100% built on the back of slaves, okay? You talk about the Freeburgers who came to farm things like sheep and wheat, I think, and a bunch of wine farms. Those farms could not have been run without slaves. So the Dutch colony that was here couldn't have existed. The trading ports that would get boats coming from Europe to stop in Cape Town and then go to Asia, that project could not have happened without slaves. So it's, sorry, just calling it slavery is the most ridiculous thing.
my favorite part of that clip was Phil making the point
That's an extreme
figuratively
example.
about slavery, and then saying like, "Whoa, look, Phil, that's not slavery," and Jack going, "Yeah, it's fucking slavery! Oh, you kidding me? Oh God!" You know. So I don't even know how to frame this. He literally thinks that being a white person in the Western Cape is the equivalent of being a slave in the Deep South, or a slave that was brought to the Cape.
So the really sad truth is that he's not an anomaly. There are a lot of white people in South Africa and the Western Cape that think that we're oppressed by this democratic regime. So for example, what's the unemployment rate in South Africa currently?
Oh, geez, it's over 50% adjusted. Not official stats to say, but more than 50%.
So what is the unemployment rate among South African, white South Africans?
I don't know.
It's below 10%.
Slavery. But it's crazy how the disparity between black and white is completely erased in these debates, and you have people like Jack and reactionaries, conservatives, racists, and let's be honest, Nazis, equating living in the Western Cape as a white person, very privileged, very coddled, very insulated from what's happening in the rest of South Africa, or even in other parts of the Western Cape, just on the other side of the M5 or the railway line, terming themselves as slaves. That's fucking insulting.
So let me put it to you this way. Like I said, I grew up in Cape Town, and I've lived in the city for a very long time. When I was growing up, I genuinely thought that I came from a poor family, because at the school I went to, I lived in the vaguely poorer suburb to a lot of my peers. A lot of their parents drove better cars than me.
You were Kenny from South Park.
And but I was like, oh no, this is hard. My mother never let me go to bed hungry. I always had a roof over my head, always had running water in my house. I always, I had au pairs. I don't know, maybe not a lot of white people grew up like that, but I had a full-time working mom, so it wasn't necessary. But the point is that there are plenty of people in this country that forget au pairs. Their parents can't drive them to work. They don't have access to running water. They don't have access to electricity. I'm not talking about load shedding. I'm talking about actual access to the power grid. A lot of people don't have that. They get a very substandard education in comparison to us. They go to former Model C schools. And And the suggestion that we are even remotely in the same state as slaves in the Cape Colony or the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republic or the Oranje Free, whatever, to make that comparison is laughable.
It's laughable. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Are you referring to white people being ethnically oppressed? Because you did mention farm murders now. Is that the ethnic oppression?
I think the most infatuation with race at this table is you. I mean, it's something you've been banging on from the start of this interview.
I think it's important. Yeah,
I think it's all you care about, and we don't. We don't care about race. We think it should be left in the relic of history. It's.
Nantle, you went strong on this one. I mean, from year on in,
Yeah.
like, all I had to do was basically watch you go. What was your reaction to?
Yeah, so it's easy for him to say it's not about race because you coming from a point of elevation. You know what I'm saying? Like you say, I didn't know it's less than 10% unemployment rate in the white community. That's so. It's just how can you be so unaware of your surroundings, man? That for me is the fucked up part, man.
I'll tell you why. It's because the Western Cape still suffers from spatial apartheid. Okay? At the end of the day, we're not even talking what's Natives Land Act is that the apartheid legislation that was posed. And then, no, sorry, that's a Group Areas Act.
Group Areas Act 19... Yeah.
The Native Land, correct
Native
me,
land, yeah.
was signed into legislation, I think, in 1910. So this is round about the time of the formation of the Union of South Africa. If you drive through Johannesburg today, you will see white people living with black people, living with, all kinds of people of color. And their homes are next to each other. If you go to, many, but obviously, there are white enclaves just about everywhere you go. But in terms of the major metropolitans, Cape Town is the most untransformed province in the country, and there's no question about that. A big part of the problem is that we have a mountain in the middle of our fucking city. So, understandable. It's very difficult to redistribute land under these circumstances, and for the DA to do that as a provincial authority is also very difficult. But if you drive into Cape Town CBD today, you're going to see 300 fucking construction cranes building the next Media 24 building or some high-rise apartment block that's going to be bought out by a bunch of European foreigners. I'm not talking about foreigners that people hate. I'm talking about the foreigners who can own property in this country. Instead of sorting out affordable housing, because we don't want those people in our neighborhoods. And this is what this guy, it's a prevailing attitude,
So if you get rid of race, I mean, Nantle, you made that point. If you ignore race from a position of where we must just do away with this concept of looking at race, the people who are already at the top of this pyramid benefit the most because it entrenches those positions.
Exactly, so they own the biggest percentage of the economy. So for you can say that. You have the privilege of saying that. Unfortunately, the people that suffer, and that's the point that I made, the people that suffer and in no way, shape or form I'm saying I'm suffering. But at least I've got empathy, man. You know what I'm saying? I can only drive not far away and I can see suffering, man. Unfortunately, because of the spatial planning, you don't have to see that, man. And the minute you see that, and it's been proven, the minute C Point sees it, they want to get rid of the homeless.
Yes.
And what's his name?
Carlos Mesquita.
He that whole episode, it's proof of it, man.
Yeah.
So it's just, how can you live like that, man? How can you live like that and with no empathy for And I get people, I get human beings are tribal, man. But dude, have a flippin' heart, my bro, man. That's, anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to come back to the slavery thing, we did an episode with Stephen Langtree where he talks about colored identity and touches on slavery. I think check that out. It's a really good, important one. I think it's an underwatched one of our series. And then Carlos Mesquita joined us. So I think it was it was definitely... that was some of our best work. I thought it was good to just hear his story. He's doing really good now. Shout out to Carlos, who's now in the provincial legislature. He's the chief of staff to the good member of the provincial legislature.
Cool.
I think that's, he's doing, and I think it's important to have outsiders on the inside, and I think that's good. Also, a shout out to Dai. You mentioned a story about your mother. Shout out to Dai, shout out to Troy, shout out to everybody in the Forest House. Okay, so again, the thing about race, and we're going to, in this Western Cape thing, there are a disproportionately high number of white people who then hold all the political and economic power. So if we do away with any consideration to racial redress, we're entrenching those patterns.
Yeah, so this is what I said was, if you're really interested in fixing the problem of the legacy of apartheid, you're gonna have to deal with the race, because exactly because there you get like a white person living in the same conditions as a colored or a black, whatever. There is people like that, right? But the majority, obviously, in Grassy Park or wherever is, or Manenberg, whatever, is colored. So you're gonna have to have a program that's geared to them, and that is race. So what you're actually telling us, like you said, it's keywords. What non-racialism is keywords is, for me, what the DA has shown is, we're going to say non-racialism, everybody's happy, Rainbow Nation, but the minute we're getting office, fuck you, dude. Our cabinet will be white, and this fuck all you can say about it. Yeah. And they will get like your Ricardo Mackenzie's in, and he was one of his victims that, on the Stanley show. Roscoe's a victim. So you get them for I call them window dressing.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So yeah, it's a sad thing, but and the majority of people they fall for the tricks because they've got nothing else to.
I mean, the DA has been playing this card since Lindiwe Mazibuko, right? Mm-hmm.
Window dressing.
Where it's like, I know actually we do govern better. The problem is that the face of our party is white, and they played the experiment with Mamusi Mamani, who we can obviously talk for hours on that, but this is what the DA does, and they window dress, and the second these black leaders who they give power and authority to speak out against the party, this old woman who apparently hates critical race theory, even though her claim to fame is uncovering Steve Biko's death, right? And I'm pretty sure by any definition of the word, Steve Biko would have been in favor of critical race theory. Anyways, so this woman, Helen Zille, holds all the power in the DA. And John Steenhuisen is just part of a rotating platform of leaders, and she's going to pick the perfect little face to run her party, and she's going to be de facto leader of that party till the day she dies. Yeah. And that is hardly democratic to me, but that's just me.
Let's go to the next one, the next clip. Yeah, sure.
Saying, how do we create jobs for the people in the Cape Flats? How do we police the Cape Flats better? How do we
this
create
one
a
is my
safe
favourite.
environment? How do we improve the education? And actually, that for me, so I kind of get it. So I think we mustn't be dismissive of race, and I think you're right in terms of there, but we also mustn't get obsessed with it because that's how we created all this mess in the first place. We actually have to come back and say, what's the problem we're trying to solve?
I think it's easier for somebody to say that as from a certain class. If it's somebody that is in poverty and you don't know where your next meal is coming from, he's gonna say, "Fuck, these people are looking down at me because I'm fucking black or because I'm colored." Sure. So he will definitely bring in race because he's the victim of the system. Because the system is lying to us. Sure. The system is saying, "No, we're gonna take. We don't race in, but then you do. But then they. I'm not saying you, but then they do. You know what I'm saying?
But I think it's a good point, and I think it's a good.
Yeah, I think when I watched that part, I was watching it with my partner, and she just like she went Nadtel.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've got it lined up with the others, where he says about the thousand.
Yes, we do that. We come into that, but I think this sort of echoes the point about what we were making previously about race, about that. So I think we can move on. Let's move on to the next one, the next clip, because I think that sort of talks.
Oh yeah, this one. This is my favorite one actually.
For me, so I'm going to sit and say, right, well, hang on a second, shall I open up a factory? Oh, well, hang on a second, not a great idea, because now if I get over a certain size, I've got to give away X number of shares. I can't. So suddenly, what happens is you start saying, well, I could just go and open that factory in the Netherlands, or I could go and open that factory in, or actually I could do something else. So what you end up with, I mean, and think of an example now where we make in BEE, we make ownership such a great thing. So now you have a situation that you have a factory. Now imagine a factory that's owned by a white person and employs 1,000 black people. The government won't support that factory. No grants are available to that because it's white owned. If you have a factory that's owned by a black guy or 1,000 white people, the government will support that. Yeah, it's absolutely nonsensical because
the white guy is going to make more than what the coloured people is going to. So then it's not addressing the real problem of poverty. Then it makes 100% sense. You just said it now.
It doesn't, because if you have no factory.
Yeah, well, let's complete that sentence. We have no factory owned by a black person that employs 1,000 white people, because there are 1,000 white people owning these factories that are employing and underpaying and like cutting into the social benefits of like 10,000 black people. And you're right, Nantel, unless black people and coloured people own the means of production, ultimately, and that was your debut as a Marxist, by the way, in case you didn't know.
Just break it down for me what a Marxist is. But my point was how will we? Because what BE is trying to do is create
redress.
Redress like stuff that the white people could have, like generational wealth. Right, so they're trying to do. So how is that 1,000 people gonna create generational wealth? Well, this is impossible. And then you have another point that I made also is again the spatial planning thing. Is say the factory will be in, say, close to the CBD. So now you got all the black people and colored people traveling from where they were forced removals. So now they're spending more money. You coming with, if you have 1,000 people, you can probably afford a very nice car. So you come in with your very nice car and you stay where the traffic is not a problem. So your commute isn't that bad.
Also, you have a car.
Yeah,
exactly. And it was, this is you mentioning that this is one of the experiences that I had when I worked in the jewelry trade, and in the color, when I bought the car, my first car, it was a big thing, and my white counterparts couldn't understand, like, why is it such a big thing? Because we didn't have it, dude. You know what I'm saying? And for them, they couldn't understand why. It's almost like you in a different stature, like a status thing, if you have the car, and they just couldn't grasp it. But why? A car is the car.
It's no big deal from a position of privilege, but it's a massive milestone that the majority of people in this country will never achieve.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's that for me, that clip is actually the whole podcast is privilege, really. It just reeks of privilege, and he's not even they're not even self-aware of what they're really saying, man.
I think also, like I said, a lot of this has to do with a fundamental misunderstanding of our history. When he talks about we need to stop focusing on race and think about how to fix policing in the colored community, whatever, you need to come up with those solutions. You need to take a step back and say, how did the colored communities end up in this situation? And at the end of the day, the way things got this way is because of race. So now we're going to say, no, we're not going to talk about race. And we're going to ignore the causes of these symptoms of gang violence, inequality, poverty, you name it.
And no, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so I was just saying that by saying that we're not going to look at race, you're putting on blinkers and you're saying, okay, I'm closed off to every other possibility of conceptualizing a solution to this problem.
A fairer, just society that works in favor of the majority of people. I have some criticisms of BEE or broad-based black economic empowerment, in the sense that it will empower a certain class of people. It will empower somebody who already has access to capital, already has access to connections, whatever, whether that the race of that person is like white or black or colored. A broad-based black economic empowerment doesn't benefit like the spaza shop owner, or it benefits a certain class of black person. Someone who already has access to financing, a certain level of access to the system, education. It's not really about like it empowers factory owners, black diamonds, people who already are lieutenants of industry can become captains of industry. So that's the criticism that I have of broad-based black economic empowerment. It's not actually fucking broad-based. It relies on a very neoliberal concept of trickle-down economics. So if we give a black person money to finance a factory in this example, the person will then create more employment and on the whole contribute to the capital will trickle down. Eventually it will reach a guy who lives in a shack, so that the water won't leak into his hovel when when the rain's really bad. So this concept of the criticism of BBBEE valid, but not from a white nationalist point of view.
Well, look, like I've said many times, like I said earlier, actually, is that I don't support the actual legislation itself, but I do support the idea of coming up with sound policy to redress our very racist history, the history of this country, which has been blighted by racism, and there's no question about it.
The other thing that kept coming up, I think it came up 3 times, where they talked about with Jack and also Phil. I'll speak under correction, but they brought this up on a number of occasions. When he was talking about colored people and the need to create employment, he kept talking about fishermen. Yeah. Now, I understand that the fishing industry is largely, because of the nature of the West Coast and where these industries are located, largely mainly a colored enterprise. But this whole thing about stereotyping or boxing colored people into particular categories to be fishermen or to be, it speaks to the stratification or continuing agenda to stratify society, where colored people, the best they can be is nurses or teachers or fishermen, but fintech, entrepreneurship, lawyers, they never talk about that shit. It's fucking insulting, actually.
No, because you see, what they hate is the colored and black people who actually do become lawyers and doctors and accountants and stuff, because those are the people they hate the most, because they're taking their high-skill jobs.
Yeah, high skill.
High skill.
I mean,
high skill.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on to the next one.
This one?
recognised by 120 or 130 countries. Didn't matter what Serbia wanted, Kosovo was independent. Ultimately, it won't matter what South Africa wants. The Western Cape can make itself independent if it wants to. But that isn't in everybody's best interest. It's not in South Africa's best interest.
Phil, I don't think that's quite the flex that you think it is, drawing up the Serbia example, because that was a clear case of playing one ethnicity against another.
Sure.
And early on I said, you want to go for full Balkanization? You said, like, yeah. So again, it comes down to this thing about like the makeup of the type of support who would support Cape independence. As you said, the majority of white people support Cape independence.
But most Cape independence supporters are coloured. White people are a very small population of the Western
dynamics
Cape.
Because of the success story of apartheid in creating this class of coloured people that actually...
that's a bit patronising, is it not?
It's not patronising.
Okay, pause that there,
because I think there are two
absolutely
points. We'll talk about the coloured thing in a moment. But Phil, early on in the interview, I asked Phil about whether he would support that the agenda is to Balkanize South Africa. And I was shocked that he said, like, yeah, I'm going to Balkanize. So I brought it up again. So I can say, like, are you sure you want to, like...
use this terminology.
Are you 100% sure you want to stick by... And he doubled down and he said, like, yeah, a Balkanization. So for the uninitiated and the people who aren't, like, politics and history nerds like me and you, Kyle, what is Balkanization?
So Balkanization is referring to the Europe, Asia Minor, kind of the Balkan regions, right? Which is places like Serbia, Montenegro, Albania, Bulgaria, that kind of general region. And Balkanization is referring to the breakup of these individual states out of the breakup of the Soviet Union in the early 90s. Now, what I don't understand is how they can stand by this use of Balkanization. I mean, what happened afterwards in the 90s was sheer horror and war. And I mean, if the platform they want to run on is we want to look like Bosnia did in 1996 or something, then I mean, I just don't think that's a winning message.
Yeah, it's not the flex he thinks it is. The Balkanization is effectively, in layman's terms, it's dividing and conquer.
To create ethno-states.
To create ethno-states, which is black people here, Muslim people can live here, white people can live here, and there's obviously, it's divide and conquer, to divide and conquer society. And then in the example of the Balkans, to have those things run by these vassal states that are really, it's run by NATO and run by America.
Yeah, fundamentally.
Yes. Okay, so that's Balkanization. So if these guys are saying that we're going to Balkanize South Africa, it means parts of KZN for the Zulus, and they'll be living under a Zulu king. Which is, whatever you argue about the state of democracy, I think it's a little bit more advanced than monarchy. You look at what's happening in Eswatini, where living under an absolute monarchy with the repression of trade unions, any opposition to the government, people are being killed. It's really not it's not the model for governance. Balkanization, you'd have the Western Cape, then obviously it would be further subdividing the Western Cape to eliminate the inconvenience of for their agenda of having black people and colored people objecting to like this white supremacist rule. Balkanization, as I said, not the flex that Phil thinks it is.
It's it was a very funny term to adapt. I think I've accused them of targeting Balkanization, and I don't know, I guess they must have thought it was a compliment or something, took it on.
They think that it's a compliment. That's the weirdest crossed wires that I've come across. It's like, if I call you an arsehole and you say, well, thank you very much, I am an arsehole.
And then I go onto someone else's platform and say, I want to view me as an expert arsehole,
Yeah. Okay, let's continue with that clip. That was a success story of apartheid, to create this kind of a class of colored people that will go with whatever the white person says. So I think to lean on that is a little bit. I think also the fact that I can say it because I'm a colored person who understands the dynamics of and the cultural fabric of what happens in the Western Cape. And I think this whole thing it's a little, especially when you draw the example of the Eastern European states and say balkanization of the country. This entire thing.
Balkanization doesn't have to be on race. The West.
Balkanization can also be on religion. It can be on sexual preference. Balkanization can be on, I don't like that fact that these guys have long hair or blue eyes or they wear denim jacket. Whatever the case may be, balkanization is a process of dividing people. And I stand by what I say about there are colored people who are effectively will fall over, would sell their own mother down the river to ingratiate white people. Look at Peter Mare. Look at all people who are like at the behest of these white supremacists. He, on the Freedom Front Plus, tabled this bill in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament last week. Thank God it was shot down. And I think there are reasons
it's not
why.
even just politicians. It's podcasters as well. Like we had a racist guy that called Malema a monkey, and when I brought it up, my fellow colored man, he laughed at it.
Yeah,
because he didn't want to upset the white man.
And I think the root of this lies in the fact that white supremacy pits, and again, this is sort of like a balkanization in a sense, so where it would pit black people against colored people in the competition for jobs, in the competition for resources, in the competition
to
for
be a second-class citizen.
Precisely. Who's number two? That's the who can be. And like I understand where that racism comes from, but the people who perpetuate that racism, particularly colored people perpetuating anti-black racism, they are not self-aware, just like these guys are not self-aware about why this particular posture, why their parents have this particular posture, why this stuff like gets passed down from racist from their racist parents, from their racist grandparents. Because in the Western Cape, as a colored person, if you had light skin, if you had if you could pass for white, your economic opportunities, you had the privilege. Even within the colored community, if you look like a black person, if there are some colored people who sort of like look, dark-skinned colored people are more. I would say that they are looked down on actually by other colored people. So that even within colored people, there are stratas of privilege that comes from the white supremacist National Party and colonial government.
Look, I mean, if anyone thinks that white supremacy is not alive and kicking today, they are categorically wrong. You don't have people with Nazi swastikas tattooed on their chest and stuff like that, but there are...
Some of them do have dodgy flags in their bedroom.
But white supremacy is a lot more subversive today than it was, because white supremacy is now socially unacceptable. And like I said, they use coded language like taxpayers and things like that. But what we also don't recognize is the things that we don't see, we only feel. So you can talk about beauty standards. Mm-hmm. If you look at, say, very famous kind of celebrities in South Africa, I'll talk about like Minnie Dlamini, who I love, by the way. And they'll walk around with lovely straight weaves and stuff like that. And like that's also ingratiated into ourselves, where we don't see it, and it's so subconscious. And guys like these CapeXit guys, I'm convinced in their heads they must believe that they are not racist. Power to them, but they are. They just don't see it. They can't recognize it in themselves because they are unwilling to address the reality of race in this country. And only once you've looked at the history, analysed the politics and the philosophy and the economics behind it all, and the media machine, and 100 million things, until you actually inspect that and have an open conversation about it, you're never going to understand what white supremacy means, and it will live in you forever.
And you'll propagate it without, particularly in the colored
Without
community.
understanding it, yeah.
You'll pass that meme on without knowing precisely what you're passing on, what's coded into that.
Exactly.
How many more of these do we have left?
2 more. So
Okay, let's go with the...
which one are you going with NATO first?
Yeah, let's do the NATO one. Western Cape has more of a Western orientation in terms of like the Atlantic powers and also.
Well,
You would orient, your idea is that the Western Cape would be oriented more towards that order.
No. So you've got to be careful. So first of all, we're policy neutral. That isn't our decision. So to be absolutely clear, apart from non-racialism and democracy, there are only 2 things. And actually, the people of the Western Cape must decide for themselves. Why do I say that the Western Cape is more Western? Well, because that's what it is now. It's got a more Western history. It's got a more Western population. It has more Western trading values. And when we've seen on the Ukraine war, we've seen the Western Cape government painting up the town hall in Cape Town in the Ukraine colours and banning Russian diplomats. So I'm not saying, because that's not my decision to make, I'm just telling you what the reality is now. So I don't know what the people of the Western Cape for certain are going to vote for post-independence. Maybe I'll get exactly what I don't want. But I can look back and say, well, what have they voted for the last 30 years? And it'll give me a pretty...
Yeah, fucking right. Maybe I won't like the white supremacist state. So, this guy does, this trick, trick that these guys play, where we're policy neutral. Like, we're just gonna wind up this white supremacist toy and what we're gonna see what happens. Maybe it'll be a social welfare state, but no, it fucking won't. So they saying that the Western Cape has more of it would be more aligned to the Atlantic powers, because it has more white, liberal and conservative people, which,
which might be problematic given the current situation with BRICS.
Yes.
But I suppose...
But regardless of that, effectively, what they're saying is that they're going to create a client state of NATO and the US. Now, the fact that they can't make a good business case for how they will pay for the army means that they're going to take this 250 billion that regardless of the fact that they will have to institute completely new systems, they never make a positive case for what the capital expenditure and the operational expenditure will be. They are going to have to either buy an army and military equipment at the cost of
hundreds of billions,
maintain it at the cost of tens of billions, or they would have to
surrender all of the property that currently belongs to the South African government, like the Cape Town harbour, like our railways, all of the stuff that actually is the property of the Republic of South Africa.
But look, there's another aspect to this. They will gladly welcome NATO and America to build a base. Now, I've look at this thing.
So more colonialism.
Pentagon's own map of US bases in Africa contradicts its claim of light footprint, formerly secret map from AFRICOM, which is the African Command of the US in Africa, shows that 29 they have 29 military bases. Now, the thing about military bases in Africa, it's nations giving away sovereignty. US military and administrative personnel being able to come in and out of the country, skipping the usual diligence of presenting
Immigration
credentials, being fast tracked, and then even the president of the country will not be able to access those things. Premises, or effectively it becomes like we can't put a military base in Washington DC when the Capitol riots were happening on January 6th. We couldn't send in a peacekeeping force from the AU, say, listen, you guys need to sort your shit out. We're sending 1,000 SANDF troops to you to help you quell the situation of this fascist breaking into the Capitol. They would tell us to go fuck ourselves. But like, why is the opposite? Why are they allowed to then effectively, these guys auction off the sovereignty of South Africa, give the US and NATO another footprint in Africa, build another base? So these guys effectively, that's why I say this is the American military industrial complex, the intelligence complex of the Five Eyes and they would welcome and in fact support this CapeXit agenda.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is it. So, for starters, the US has turned the Western world order. So I'm not just going to say the US, I'm going to talk about Europe as well. But they turned their back on Africa a very, very, very long time ago. China, after rising from almost nothing in the 90s to where it is today, where it is the number one competitor to the US economy, has been investing in Africa for a very long time. And the US doesn't like the status quo because Africa is actually an incredibly promising continent. Now, I know a lot of people are feeling very despondent about the hopes and dreams of this continent, but we, by the year 2050, I'm probably going to butcher the stats, but I think a third of the global population will be living on this continent. We will be competing, as in the amalgamated GDP of the entire continent will be bigger than everyone else's GDPs. We've got a very promising fintech industry, for example. Mm-hmm. This continent is going to be critical in the next 20 to 30, even 40 years. And the US wants to have their own stranglehold in this geopolitical chessboard that will be in between in this kind of second Cold War between the US and China.
Yeah. Okay, look, so again, these CapeXiters, the Cape Party won't be independent. In fact, it will be dependent on Western powers and erode the sovereignty of South Africa. We got one more clip, right? Yeah. Okay, let's play that.
And I always say, if you can just give me one example where that happened in the world, then we can talk about it. But I can give you every single one. You'll see that just isn't how it works. You would like it to work that way. It doesn't.
Mm. So you're saying that if you have this referendum, it's going to happen that the Western Cape leaves South Africa?
Well, because that's what the law says. And actually, there has to be a negotiation. And you're quite right in terms of, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to allow people to cross the border? What's going to happen with trade? How are we going to settle the national debt? Who's going to get citizenship? There's all sorts of questions that have to be resolved, and they have to be resolved fairly. And that's not going to be an easy negotiation. We saw in Brexit, it took 3 years for Brexit to happen as the two sides. But that would be that wasn't a secession, would be a great example. Of actually you've got these two parties who the EU doesn't want the UK to leave, the UK does want to leave, but ultimately neither one can unilaterally just dictate. They have to find, because we're in the real world, and so I don't think South Africa has any intention of forcing that militarily. I don't think it could anyway, but even if it could and it was going to, then there would be no better argument for capability. If actually our democracy is so frail that whatever we vote for, even if we vote for our freedom, they're going to make us stay at the end of a gun, then that absolutely tells you. In other words, listen, you're not going to get divorced, because if you do get divorced, I'm going to come around with my gun and I'm going to shoot you, or I'm going to beat the living daylights out of you.
My interpretation. Okay, so what the law says, this is what Paul Craig says. Look, this is what the law says. So let's pull up the Constitution of South Africa. I think I sent you that. Yeah. Chapter 3, cooperative government. So the government of the Republic. In the Republic, government is constituted as national, provincial, local spheres of government which are distinctive, interdependent, and interrelated. Right, 41.1. All spheres of government and all organs of state within each sphere must A. preserve the peace, national unity, and here comes the part where this grift fucking falls apart. Indivisibility of the Republic. Now, what is, maybe I'm stupid, what is the definition of indivisibility? It's something that can't be divided, right? Apparently. So, in the Constitution, all spheres of government as determined by 40, governments constituted national, provincial, local spheres, all spheres of government, all organs of state within each sphere must preserve the peace, national unity, and indivisibility of the Republic. Case closed. It can't happen. And what's more,
that's why I call it a grift.
It's a grift.
Because it's just a lie.
And it's bullshit.
And they're making money.
A lot of money. 800,000 people, they say, they claim, I don't know if they falsely claim or whether it's through contribute to their, or rather have signed up to their newsletter. But a portion, if you're working on the percentage of, if even 10% and they give $1 a month, that's a lot of money. Yeah. Now,
I've got a sound bite for them.
Mang. So look, the consequences of this, if you go against this, it's something called sedition. There's a unit of the police called the Crimes Against the State unit. And I think that the reason why this bill failed, or rather it was tabled and it was just scuttled in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, is because it opens up liability for Alan Windey and anybody who supports it to be arrested for sedition, to be thrown into a prison cell, and there's nothing that they can do about it. I mean, these guys, it makes no sense that they're not even thinking about that they could very well go to prison for rebelling against a sovereign state.
It's tantamount to an insurrection.
It's not tantamount. Tantamount means almost like.
Yeah.
It is seditious.
I mean, I'm no the expert on criminal law, so I don't really have anything to add other than it's treasonous, it's anti-South Africa, it's anti-democracy, it's anti-constitutional. There are a million words that I can use to describe this movement, but it's, at the end of the day, it's just a rehash of what the architects of apartheid wanted, like I said.
No, precisely. Okay, look, I'm all CapeXited out. So I think that, we've gone through, we've run the gamut of all the bullshit that
Singapore, you're not going to use Singapore?
Yeah, let's do, okay, again, let's look at because they keep on saying about Singapore being this like perfect state, and Jack mentions Singapore like so many times. So if you want to go and live in Singapore, let's say the Freedom Index in Singapore, rights have evolved significantly from the day since independence. Of the government in Singapore has broad powers to possibly limit citizens' rights or to inhibit political opposition. In 2018, Singapore was ranked 151st by Reporters Without Borders in the Worldwide Press Freedom Index. What's your understanding of Singapore as a state and the freedoms that they afford citizens and institutions in that state?
So, in terms of this 1984 surveillance state kind of thing that, all the communists are going to bring to us and stuff. Singapore is about as dystopian as you get. I don't know. I can't say that I understand the politics in Singapore in granular detail, but it's just not a free country, and again, it's a weird flex, right?
That's a weird flex. Okay, I'm CapeXit out. No more CapeXit. No more. None of that. I'm also done with the submarine. Can we just say that what's it Titanic meme? Are you gonna say it or am I gonna say it?
The one. Props to the Titanic for still killing rich people 111 years later. That one.
Yep.
I think that story is actually very interesting for one reason. It shows how much people hate rich people. Mm-hmm. And there are a bunch of people saying, oh, where's your humanity? Mm. But the state of the world, not just in South Africa, not just in America, everywhere, we're sick and tired of rich people who are spending shit tons of money to go on pointless cruises while we can't even feed ourselves. Mm. And yeah, I think that was my most insightful observation from that story.
What I would say about that submersible, I was relieved that the death was instantaneous, because I think what captured the imagination is the scenario where there were 5 people trapped on board with
limited oxygen.
With limited oxygen. I think that would have been, if they had to die, I think
that would have been a worse way.
I feel for the son though, because he just wanted to spend time with his father.
That was bad, and he was terrified
Yeah.
before. Yeah, so I mean, there is a human element, underneath the memes and the Schadenfreude that came after that.
But you shouldn't. The people that makes that does the memes, they shouldn't sink that low next time.
Okay, that was good.
That was the best. That's the best one, actually. Okay, so done with CapeXit, done with the submarine. While I've got you on, because you are one of the people that one of our first interactions was talking about universal basic income, or the basic income grant. I want to play, when we had Brett Heron on a few days ago, the Good Party have launched an initiative for 999 Rand basic income grant or basic income guarantee. Let's play this clip, and then I want to get your thoughts on it. People that were opposed to this program. Who are they? No, that's not the clip. Sorry,
the DA is.
I think it's further on in the. No, further, but more. There we go. Goods 999 plan. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so I want to talk about the basic income grant, or rather, we call it BIG. Other people call it UBI. Now, people are being laid off because of everyone's doing ChatGPT and GPT-4. That's going to have an impact on the labor market. So basic income grant becomes more and more of a viable policy platform, and actually something that will be needed going forward. What is Good's, I would say, vision of a basic income grant?
So we've been doing a lot of research on basic income. We've been speaking in favor of a basic income guarantee or basic income grant, or UBI as it's called in some places. Although UBI is not the right word for the program that we're promoting in South Africa, because UBI means universal basic income. So that means every citizen gets it whether you need it or not. So we have concluded that. And we're launching this campaign tomorrow, actually. We are launching a campaign for basic income guarantee or basic income grant at the lower bound poverty line. So the lower bound poverty line is currently at around 854 Rand per month, but that data is very old. And we have extrapolated that data to, it's about 1,000 Rand a month. And so tomorrow we're launching our 999 Rand per month basic income grant for all of those South Africans who wake up every single day facing a day without a job and without an income, and who are expected to survive. So we've been sort of unwavering in our position around basic income grant, and we've now done the research. We've put a number to it. We've identified where we can fund it from within our fiscus. Basically, it's about 2% of our total expenditure if we were to fund a basic income grant of 999.
So 999 rand basic income grant. So what you are the proponent, when I spoke to you, of the 6,460 rand basic income
And that
grant.
was a few years ago as well.
Okay, so what do you think about Good's model of the basic income grant?
So, I mean, for starters, I think it's good that someone's advocating for a basic income grant or So I'm not an advocate of a basic income grant. I'm an advocate of a universal basic income. So what the universal part of that is what's most important, because it shouldn't only be going to unemployed South Africans, it should be going to every South African. Because what happens is that your reward for finding a job when you're unemployed is to have your grant taken away from you. And this is one of the big reasons why we have such a huge discouraged workforce. People who say, actually, I'd rather stay at home and collect my unemployment check than actually go find a grant, find a job, because then I'm going to lose my grant. And I'm probably going to spend more money actually getting the transport to my job than I will be taking home, extra. And I'm going to end up making less money by getting a job. So, with all due respect to Good and Brett Heron, I'm not a fan of their proposal. It's a good start. I also think that 999 is far too low a figure. I think I'd prefer a figure closer to 10 grand a month.
10 grand a month that everybody in the country should get.
I haven't done any calculations. I don't know what our treasury looks like, and I haven't done any studying on that in a while. But I just don't see how anyone can say that you can live a reasonable standard of living with anything less than a sum like that, because I don't think that we should say that your minimum standard of living is to be very impoverished, the bottom end of the poverty line, as he puts it. That's not an acceptable standard of living. And the lower and lower we make that grant, the less effective it is.
Okay. Well, look, I'm happy that that this is also coming into the discourse. I'm also, my framing that I put to Brett was very sort of bourgeois in a way. I said, hey, AI is coming, we need the basic, and he blew right past that, and I think to his credit he did, because AI is not going to be the thing that takes away jobs, because we already have such massive unemployment, so many discouraged job seekers that it's not about whatever the bourgeois conception of Chat GPT is taking my accounting job. It's really, there are already people who need emergency money now to survive the economic precarity that's worsening every single day in this country.
So the way, there's a Dutch historian called Rutger Bregman, who I'm a massive fan of. He says that poverty is not a lack of character, it's a lack of cash. Okay? So the more cash you have, the more uplifted you feel, the less stressed out by the trauma of poverty you are, the better you can perform at work, the better you can perform at school. Because you're not, if you have access to cash, I promise you now that poor people know better how to take themselves out of poverty than the government does. And that is undeniable, because the government has been trying with grants and mean-tested programs where you have to prove that you're poor enough for you to qualify for this program. There's a ton of bureaucratic red tape. The administrative costs go up, and those programs have proven themselves not to work. So just give poor people money to spend. And the more they spend, the more money goes into the economy, the more money in the economy, the more goods and services are produced. The more goods and services produced are the more jobs, and the system feeds back into itself.
Okay. No, I agree with you there. I just think I need to see a study about what it would take to. I would love for everybody to get 10 grand.
I mean, I'm just saying that as a random figure, but I haven't done that research in a while.
Okay. Are we going to do the Nick Hedley thing? We're going to do the Nick Hedley stuff. My good friend Nick Hedley. So on the 21st of June, there's this guy, Nick Hedley, on Twitter. On climate change, he is amazing. I agree with 99.9 things, possibly 100 things that he says about climate. On energy stuff, I agree with, let's say, 90% of what he says, because where energy and climate intersect, that's so we leaves a sliver for politics to come in. Now, as smart and as unimpeachable as Nick Hedley is about climate, he's the opposite when it comes to politics. So, Nick Hedley tweets, 3 major African. Let me. I don't know what his voice sounds like, but I will read it in our.
I mean, Nick, he's a very nice guy.
I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm sure he's a really nice guy, but he's fucking shit at politics, and his political takes are just like absolute as garbage as his takes on climate are gold. I'll give the man his due. It's amazing in climate. Shit at politics. So he had a political take. The 3 major African countries that seem to be on the up thanks to fresh leadership and a focus on positive reforms: Nigeria, Zambia, Kenya. And then Africa dragged this guy like I've never seen Pan-African unity expressed in the way that the fucking Africa dragged this guy. So let's go through. Okay, as we know, I gave my. Let's go to the next one. This is Africa dragging him. Okay, so somebody says, please watch this carefully. The man who did blah, blah. Okay, will do. Rwanda, yes, although it's come at the expense of media freedom and other rights. Next one. Any news on Egypt? Very much out of the loop. Kindly delete Kenya from that list. I'm basing this on relatively limited knowledge. What is Ruto getting wrong? Ruto's getting a fuckload wrong, Nick. First of all, creating foreign policy by tweet in the way that the State Department has to walk it back. This Trumpy guy. Then we go on. The things written on Twitter. Anya says, have you actually ever experienced Nigeria? Do you actually follow events leading up to Nigeria's last elections or the past 24 hours in Lagos? Next one. Good news, and I hope you're considering to emigrate to Nigeria. I wish you the very best in Nigeria. I mean, the fact that we can go on and on and on and on. I'm just taking Agbogidi the Magnificent. You should be writing comedies. Shay says, I think you should experience Nigeria presently before tweeting this out to the public. Last Patriarch wrote, are you okay, sir? How much did Nigeria's drug kingpin pay you for this lightweight PR? Lol, Nigeria. You need to read what Nigerians are saying about their country, mate. Ecos, delete Nigeria from your list. Wholesome Jen says, in all caps with 5 question marks, Nigeria? Ntokozo says, Nigeria? Nigeria? Peter Opie fan page says, Nigeria? Nigeria? Nigeria?
Delete, otherwise tell us how much you have been paid.
Unbelievable. Please don't write what you don't know about Nigeria. I'm just going through all of these. Jacob at area_J says, you still have time to delete this? Kinua says, delete. Otherwise, tell us how much you're being paid. Queen Fax. What a joke with one of my favorite memes, the Spitty Girl drinking meme. Then the quote sheet, the quote tweets, Kenya, pray Kenyans don't see this tweet. Who's Thabi Jacob, PhD? Well, he's only one of the most influential people. So, quote tweeting, fresh leadership and Nigerian one sentence. And then someone says, I only think it's best you do away with researcher nonsense you put in your bio. I'm pretty sure you have no clue what is actually going on. And Nick admits this. He says relatively little knowledge. This is like the second image laundering kind of tweet I've seen today coming from across the sea. Have you lived in Nigeria and felt what Nigerians have been feeling for the past 8 years? They make me laugh. Is this one normal in the head? Have you been living in a cave for the last few months, or you were just intentionally being stupid? Local girl, interesting enough, if you speak to some citizens from these countries, they may tell a different story. I call BS on Kenya. That's the most hilarious thing I've heard on Kenya. Kenya is turning into a dictatorship that is, for instance, threatening to gag media, press, and freedom. Another Deniride says, here's another case of tweeting in ignorance. I'm going to go through all of it. I think it's very important, Nick, for me to go on record, since you've blocked me on Twitter, so I can no longer see your genius climate tweets and your absolutely shit political takes. Nigeria, you might have to reevaluate your information sources and analysis, because Nigeria is turning into a mafia state.
And they're in a cash crisis.
Exactly. This is called white-splaining Africa for Africans living in Africa. And that's exactly the case may be. How can somebody who claims to have very limited knowledge then just tweet bullshit and leave it up there? You know, like this white messiah complex that Nick Hedley has about politics. I can't believe it. Are you tweeting from oblivion, or you didn't get your facts correct? Lol. SMH. What motivated this ignorant tweet? These are all your quote tweets. What's this? Another person writes, have you ever been to Nigeria? Then we get into emojis. Crying, laughing face, crying, laughing face, crying, laughing face. LOL. Another Jamie with the rainbow flag says, LOL. Somebody's got the Bukola's got the palm on the face emoji. LOL. Uzia rise BFFR. And if in case you're wondering what BFFR is, it's be fucking for real, Nick. Then he says again, Nick, ignore the Nyewe naysays from Nigerian Kenya. They will always Nyewe from here to the moon. Keep an eye on those, and let's see if in the next 6 months the impact will be felt or sustained. In the most pablum response I've ever seen. I hope so, Nick Hedley says. It's Africa's time to shine. Just fucking play Waka Waka in the background while it's time for Africa, you know?
Look, I mean,
you don't have to say I know you've met the guy.
So I understand why Nick did this, because as I said to you, as I was talking about earlier, the African continent, in terms of our economic development and growth and stuff, is looking very promising. Our fintech industry received a lot of investment last year. For example, the biggest mobile money market in the world is in East Africa, in Kenya, which has been really good, and I think there's a lot of promising stuff that could happen there. But at the end of the day, on the ground, many Africans are still suffering very, very hard. And Nick, what Steve Biko says is that the problem with white liberals I don't want to call Nick a liberal or call myself a liberal or anything. But anyways, when he writes about white liberals, he says the problem is white liberals can spend all day discussing black people's empowerment and, fixing natives' lives in black lives. I can't remember how he put it exactly, but he says, but at the end of the day, when they're done debating, they get to go home and sit in their white homes where they live in their privilege. The difference for black people in South Africa, and he's writing in the 70s now, so says the difference is we go home and we live that horror. We're not just debating over semantics and having an academic discussion about it. And for Nick, that again, I have nothing bad to say to the guy, but this is kind of one of those sort of stay in your lane kind of moments.
Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane, Nick. It's time for Africa to shine. I mean, any news on Egypt, very much out of the loop. Yeah, in politics, you are very much out of the loop. I think Kerry Cullinan, had the most considered tweet. Kenya's first evangelical president is doing his best to limit access to sexual and reproductive health services. His allies are attacking NGOs, and his parliament is about to consider a similar anti-LGBTQ bill as that of Uganda. What's Nick's response? Oh dear. So, Nick, stay in your lane. Your lane, you dominate it. You are an accomplished thought leader when it comes to climate change. We need more of that. We need to mainstream more of that. We need to depoliticize the thing about climate change. On energy, you're 90% there. On politics, the guy who says he supports Action SA because of their education policies, it's really like supporting Mussolini because of his policy on timetables for trains. Come on, BFFR, Nick Hedley. Listen, gents, I think I've said all I wanted to say. We've dealt with CapeXit. We've dealt with that fucking submarine. We've dealt with Hedley. I think I can go to sleep with peace in my heart and soul. So
I'm glad it's been a fun conversation.
It's been cool, yeah. I mean,
let's rip on these guys again soon.
Let's do it again soon, man. And Nantle, thank you so much for
All good.
Yeah, and I didn't know the soundboard was. We're gonna do some more soundboard stuff in the future. Just play me that Super Mario one again. And we out.